Zakai Zeigler's request for a fifth year of eligibility was denied in a rare but much needed legal win for the NCAA.
You are Locked On College Basketball, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, folks, and welcome into the Locked On College Basketball Podcast, a daily national college hoop show, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am your solo host for today's show, Andy Patton, and you are joining at the place to get your college basketball content every single day, Monday through Friday, right here. Whether we're in the middle of the offseason or not, you can find us every single day on Locked On College Hoops. I want to thank all of you for making the show your first listen or your first watch of the day. Give a special shout out to those of you hanging out with us in the Locked On College Basketball Discord community and those of you who are everyday listeners. Remind you all that you can check out this show ad-free on Amazon Music. Today's episode of Locked On College Basketball is brought to you by Gametime. Folks, download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege, and you'll get $20 off your first purchase. Lots to cover today. The Rady Childrens Invitational 4-team field is set, and it is a doozy. We're going to talk about that to close out the show. Plus, a couple of trio, actually, of international additions for Arkansas, what that means for Coach Calipari's team. A huge win for Virginia Tech on the recruiting trail. We'll talk about that as well. But before we get to all of that, news that came out late last week that Isaac and I did not cover on Monday's show. Zakai Zeigler, the Tennessee guard, multiple-time SEC Defensive Player of the Year, one of the most prolific. He was an All-American last year, one of the best passers and defending guards in all of college basketball. For those who had missed this story, he was suing the NCAA for a fifth year of eligibility. He had requested a preliminary injunction, which is what happened not last season, but the previous season, when the players who were two-time transfers who were sitting out because that was still the rule. The preliminary injunction was granted for many of those players, which immediately made those players eligible right away. If you recall, players like Efton Reed, and there was a handful of others who were sitting on the bench expecting to sit out all year and very suddenly got eligibility. A preliminary injunction is what Zakai Zeigler had filed in order to basically temporarily play this upcoming season while the rest of the lawsuit played out. For over the course of about 6 days, a judge heard the case for the preliminary injunction. It was Catherine Kreitzer, a U.S. district judge. And ultimately, after about 5 or 6 days, I believe, of hearing the injunction, she opted not to grant that injunction for Zakai Zeigler, saying that he, quote, failed to demonstrate that he would succeed in his argument that the NCAA keeping him from playing a fifth season is a violation under the Sherman Act. So basically, Zakai Zeigler was arguing, or his lawyers were arguing, I should say, that he would make somewhere between $2 to $4 million if he returned to college basketball for a fifth year. No argument here. Zakai Zeigler would absolutely be a millionaire based off of a fifth and final season of college basketball. And what they're trying to argue is basically, had he redshirted for a year, you can still make NIL money while redshirting. And so their argument is like, well, he could have made money for 5 years. The NCAA rule is basically you have 5 years to complete 4 years of college basketball. Or any sport. And their argument was, well, if he had actually spent 5 years in college and just redshirted one of those years, he still could have made money during that other year and is basically being robbed of an opportunity to play for a fifth year. It is a fairly flimsy argument, if we're being honest. Zakai Zeigler played 30 or more games in 4 straight seasons. There is no more clear-cut, look at his case. He played 30-plus games, 30-plus games, 30-plus games, 30-plus games. He did not deal with injuries. There was not a COVID season. He was not a multi-time transfer who got sudden eligibility. There's not a compelling case here. And in fact, the NCAA's argument, part of their argument, was basically saying exactly that. They said the NCAA argued it should be denied because he is asking the court to make him the first athlete to play a fifth season, quote, as a matter of right. And I like the way that is phrased because it effectively means you're not going to be the first player to get a fifth year. In fact, there are guys who've gotten 6th years, 7th years, et cetera. We know that. It's kind of crazy right now. Chad Baker-Mazara is coming back to college, and he's 26 years old. But that Ziegler's argument was effectively, I should get a fifth year of eligibility, period. I understand the argument about NIL and various things like that, but there's not a real case in the sense that he was not denied previous time. He just played 4 years of college basketball. And effectively, the argument is, I should get to play 5. And that is not going to be granted, at least temporarily. And again, the lack of granting the injunction doesn't necessarily mean that Ziegler's going to lose the lawsuit. In fact, it doesn't mean that at all. His lawyers are saying, we still feel confident about this. We're disappointed in the result, which, is kind of the generic PR speak that you would expect from this. But it is notable that Judge Kreitzer said in her injunction denial that she does not believe that they have a compelling case to win the lawsuit. You would not deny an injunction if you felt like they had a strong case to win the lawsuit. So by doing so, she's kind of saying, I don't think that the case you're trying to make is particularly valid. She also, and I thought that this was a strong reasoning that I think would have been hard for them to fight, but one of the reasons that she cited in her denial letter was, there are current student athletes who have committed to schools like Tennessee, or are high school recruits who are planning to go to schools like Tennessee. And if we were to grant an injunction right now, that would allow Ziegler and many other players an immediate opportunity to play college basketball. That would create significant headaches and could potentially impact, I think the way that I'm trying to find the exact phrasing that she said, but effectively she said that she didn't think that it would be unfair to those student athletes who had already committed to go to those schools, who are now going to be potentially pushed out because of guys like Ziegler coming back to school. And I think that's to me a really strong argument in this specific argument. You should not be given an injunction to suddenly return to school that's going to impact, Tennessee's going to have a hard time. Like, Ziegler going to just assume he gets a spot back at Tennessee? Does that mean somebody who they recruited is going to lose their spot? Can they re-enter the portal? Like, it just gets really, really messy at that point. And I think for me, that's the most compelling reason of this shouldn't have happened. It shouldn't have been granted. And it's, we're talking about it from Ziegler's perspective, but there were so many players, and I'm not blaming any of these players in particular, but like the Ian Shefflins, Ben Gregg, Jaden Zachary, like so many other players who entered the transfer portal because they thought, hey, maybe if something happens here, maybe if I am given an extra year of eligibility, if I enter the portal, I'll at least have options. And I think that's the right way to go about it. But again, it just never really made sense for the NCAA to just suddenly have a rule change in the middle of the offseason. But again, we saw it in the middle of a season not that long ago. And I think that's the overall point here, is that whatever happens with the Ziegler case down the line, the NCAA has to get to a point where they're not letting their rules and regulations be dictated by the court of law. It just cannot continue to be the way that it goes. The NCAA has to have more of a backbone, and they have to start enforcing their rules, and they may end up getting lawsuits thrown against them. We're seeing that actively, but right now it almost feels like the NCAA is just kind of waiting for lawsuits to determine what their rules should be. And that's backwards. Set a rule, have a hard and firm rule on it, a line. And then if somebody tries to take it to court and the court does end up ruling against you, then you can back off and you can figure it out. This is part of why I think the next steps, now that the House settlement is finalized, I think a lot of people are jumping to the next steps being contracts and employment. And I ultimately do think that will happen. I do think in the next 10 or so years, student athletes will be employees at their universities. I think that is something that is coming down the pipeline. But I think the short-term steps before we get there, I think you need collective bargaining. You need a group to represent student athletes, a group to represent the NCAA and the presidents and athletic directors and conference commissioners and the kind of the leadership groups. And you need these groups to sit down and hash some stuff out. And that includes figuring out multi-time transfers. What do we want to do? Do we want to go back to a sit-out year if you've transferred more than once? Like what rules do we want there? Some clarity and consistency on waiver rulings, which are very inconsistent right now and insanely frustrating for players and coaches and fans alike. International players right now, you can bring in a 22-year-old freshman. That seems like something that they're going to want to figure out what guardrails they want around that. Transfer portal windows, transfer portal limits, like things like that. There's just so many things that right now the NCAA, again, is sort of just letting courts dictate what their rules are going to be and when they're going to be enforced. And it just feels like it's confusing for fans, confusing for players, confusing for coaches. And if you had some kind of collective bargaining, yeah, they're going to disagree, but that's the whole point of collective bargaining is you get together, you figure it out, you hash it out, you come up with some rules and regulations that fit and make sense, and then you figure out how to enforce said rules and regulations so that you're not relying on injunctions and court cases and lawsuits and having situations arise where you suddenly have a bunch of players on your roster who are all of a sudden eligible to play right away and you weren't expecting that. Or in this case, had this injunction been granted, suddenly a huge chunk of players all of a sudden available in the transfer portal. Like that just would have been chaos and not really within the spirit of college athletics. So I'm glad that this injunction did not pass, but I think it's a clear sign that some kind of collective bargaining and guardrails and rules and regulations need to be come up with, they need to work together to come up with them soon, because this is just getting out of hand, and we need some protections here before things get worse. Well, folks, Virginia Tech landed the second highest ranked international prospect in the entire offseason in Neo Avdalas, who likely would have been picked potentially in the first round or at least early in the second round of the 2025 NBA draft. How did Mike Young do it? We'll talk about that in just a second. But first, folks, there's nothing like the NBA Finals, the intensity, the buzzer beaters, the fans losing their minds. We've seen it all, and it is the kind of atmosphere that you have to experience live. And boy, have this year's matchups, they have delivered in every imaginable way so far. And if you want in, Gametime makes it fast and easy to get seats, even for the biggest playoff games. Prices on the app, they actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off. And with their killer last-minute deals, panoramic seat views, and no surprise fees at checkout, Gametime is a total game changer. I love the fact that I can see the exact view from my seat before I buy. There's no surprises. And the app makes it super simple. Just 2 taps and I'm done. And with Gametime's guarantee, you know you're getting the best deal. In fact, if you find a better price in the same row and section, they will credit you 110% of the difference. So folks, take the best guesswork out of buying tickets by using Gametime. Download the Gametime app now, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege, and you'll actually get $20 off your first purchase. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Terms apply. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. All right, folks, segment 2, still Andy Patton here, still locked on college basketball. Moving away from our conversation about Zakai Zeigler's denial of his request for a preliminary injunction and what it means for college hoops, to talk about some international additions that we just saw over the last couple of days. And we'll start with the big one. Neo Avdalas, 6'8" wing from Greece, has withdrawn from the 2025 NBA draft and officially committed to join Virginia Tech, the Hokies, for the 2025-26 college basketball season. And if you're thinking, wait, Andy, I thought the withdrawal deadline was May 28th. You guys made a big deal about how the deadline's actually in May and not in June. Yes, the deadline to withdraw from the NBA draft for college players, as in players currently in college, was May 28th. However, international players had until June 15th to stay in the draft or pull their name out of the draft. Avdalas waited until the final minute. He withdrew his name late on June 15th, and then shortly after that, he made his commitment to Virginia Tech Public. Now, it seemed like, he was 50-50 right up to the last minute because of when the announcement came out. There's a lot of reports indicating that Avdalas had more or less made this decision a while ago and was kind of like locked in to go to Virginia Tech. There was rumblings that Virginia Tech was pretty much locked in to get him way back in May, over a month ago, as we're recording this right now. So this is not like a big stunner necessarily, but it still, until we saw him officially pull out of the draft, there was always a chance that he would stay in. And every single time that a LeBaron Philon or a Tahad Pettiford or an Alex Condon or a Milos Uzon, whenever those guys came back to school and Avdalas's draft value continued to rise steadily and steadily, he went from, he's a late second round pick to maybe he's a middle second round pick to, at the time of his decision to return to school or to withdraw from the draft and come to college, he was starting to show up in the 30s and 40s, and in some places had him as a first round pick. Now he's very raw and would have been a dart throw of a first round pick in the NBA draft. But still, I think it's a testament to Virginia Tech to be able to convince him to return to school. And again, I think just the larger conversation, which we've had a handful of times on the show, so we won't relitigate it here, but players are opting to if you're not going to give them a guaranteed contract in the NBA, which most second round picks do not get guaranteed contracts, if you're not going to get that, they're going to return to school. And right now, your contract is, guaranteed is a tough word in college athletics. There are multiple teams being sued by players who did not get paid for their NIL deals, and that is a problem. But right now, if you were going to be a second round pick, maybe a two-way contract, maybe wash out of the league in a year or two, or you go to college, you get promised millions of dollars, and you're not going to wash out of college basketball. Like, you're going to play big minutes. You're going to hopefully boost your draft stock. Obviously, there's a risk that you don't do that. And there are players who return to school this year. I don't know which ones. I'm not going to be mean and predict which ones, but there are players who are going to hurt their draft stock having chosen to return to school instead of playing in the NBA draft. I guarantee it. I guarantee you there are players who hurt their draft stock with that decision. But I don't think Neo Avdalas is one of them necessarily. But and even if he is, even if his draft stock doesn't improve, he makes guaranteed money this year, which he may not have made had he stayed in the NBA draft process, gone in the second round, a two-way contract, or released from his deal. Like, that totally could have happened. I don't know what Virginia Tech is paying him. I don't know the examples there, but I do know that they were in on him early. They recruited him very heavily. And when schools like Kansas State and Gonzaga and a few others came knocking around and poking around, he stayed pretty firm with his decision to go to Virginia Tech. Huge shout out to Mike Young and the Hokie staff for being able to do that, because this is not a program that has a ton of basketball success. They haven't made the tournament in the last couple of years. They haven't been a high seed in the tournament in close to a decade. This is not a great basketball program. And the ACC is a little bit down right now. I think we've seen it improve. Miami and Virginia should be better. NC State will be significantly better. And now Virginia Tech brings in a really quality player. He's a 6'8" guard. He compares his game to Luka Doncic, and you got to take players comparing their own games with a little bit of a grain of salt, but you watch the tape, you can see why. He's a bigger guard with fluidity and athleticism to his game. He's got a good mid-range game. He's got a good three-point shot, decent defensive skills as well. There's a lot to like about Avdalas's game. And I think for Mike Young and for Virginia Tech, the thing that they for sure could promise him that other programs maybe couldn't is, we're going to put you in a position to score 20 a night. Like, we're going to give you the ball. We're going to let you go to work. Like, you are our guy. You are our creator. You are, if you want to be a 6'8" point guard, fine, come here and be a 6'8" point guard. Like, we'll let you do that. And other programs, I think we're probably not going to give him that kind of free reign or guaranteed playing time, guaranteed role, the way that Virginia Tech was more able to do. Huge addition for them. They already brought in 3 high school recruits. They also have another international player joining them, a German 7-foot center named Antonio Dorn, 3 incoming transfers as well, Isaiah Pasha from Delaware, Amani Hansberry from West Virginia, and Jalen Bedford from UNLV. So a nice class joining Virginia Tech this year. Should be really fun to see what Avdalas can do at the college level. Now I want to talk a little bit Arkansas hoops here. They landed a couple of big names internationally over the last couple of days. Paulo Samido is their most recent one, a 7'1" center. He's actually from West Oaks Academy in Orlando, Florida, is where he was playing most recently. The 4-star recruit, 50th ranked prospect in the 2025 class, according to ESPN. On3 still hasn't listed in the 2026 class. There's some reclassification stuff going on there. Samido's plan is to join Arkansas for this year, so he has or is in the process of reclassifying to 2025. He chose Arkansas over Florida State, Arizona State, and Miami. He joins a 3-person international class. I say Samido's international. I know he's technically from Florida, but he's international prior to that. They also added Elmir Zavic and Karim Retail. Zavic is a 7', 19-year-old center from Bosnia, and then Retail is a 6'9" forward who's from Lebanon but's been playing internationally in Lithuania. He signed much earlier. He signed, I think, back in March. Zavic signed much more recently, coming from Bosnia Sarajevo in the Adriatic League. So a couple international flavor joining this Arkansas team. Very exciting for them. Obviously, their primary additions have been in the domestic recruiting class: Darius Acuff, Malik Thomas, and Isaiah Sealy. They're 3 incoming freshmen from the States. Acuff and Thomas, both 5 stars, top 15 players in the class. Sealy, a 4-star, just outside the top 100. They also got a pair of transfers joining them in Malik Ewan from Florida State and Nick Pringle from South Carolina. That, combined with the 4 returners, which would be Carter Knox, Billy Richmond, DJ Wagner, and Trevin Brazil, makes me very intrigued by how these pieces are all going to fit together for Arkansas. You have 4 returners, 3 incoming freshmen, 2 incoming transfers, 3 international freshmen, just a hodgepodge of talent from various places, various localities, various experience levels. Going to be kind of fun to see how all the pieces shake out. My very early, just knee-jerk guess at a lineup rotation type for John Calipari and the Hogs. Point guard's going to be split between Wagner and Acuff. I think Acuff's the better player, but gosh, Calipari has really relied on Wagner even when he isn't necessarily the better player. So we'll be interested to see how that shakes out. Knox and Thomas are your two at the 2. And then you think Richmond, Brazil, and maybe Isaiah Sealy, the other freshman, kind of fit in at the 3. Nick Pringle and Retail, the 6'9" power forward, are going to play the 4. And then Ewin, Samido, and Zavic, the 2 internationals, probably fit in at the 5. That's my guess. It's going to look something like that, a combination of transfers, returners, maybe some incoming freshmen in that starting lineup. But I think Wagner, Knox, and Richmond probably all start. And then the other spots could go to the 2 transfers, Ewin and Pringle. That would have Brazil coming off the bench as well as the 2 superstar freshmen. So either way, there's a lot of depth for Coach Calipari and this Arkansas team. I'm excited to see what they can do in an SEC that might not be quite as good as last year. So maybe Arkansas can make some real noise in Coach Cal's second season. Well, folks, the Rady Childrens Invitational is officially set. The defending champs, they got themselves a tough early season test on Thanksgiving. We're going to talk about that to close out the show in just a second. All right, folks, segment 3, still Andy Patton, still Locked On College Basketball Podcast. Closing out the show, talking about a mini 4-team MTE that is officially set for this upcoming 25-26 college basketball season. The Rady Childrens Invitational, now in its 3rd season, will take place on Thanksgiving and November 28th, Black Friday. So the 27th and the 28th are the 2 dates for this 4-team MTE. The 4 teams that are involved and the matchups, you got the Wisconsin Badgers out of the Big Ten taking on the Providence Friars in the Big East. And then the other matchup, Florida, the defending champion Gators out of the SEC taking on Big 12 foe TCU, the Horned Frogs. Those are your 2 matchups. The winners of those 2 games will play in a championship game on the 28th. The losers of that game will also play on the 28th in a consolation bracket as well. These teams were reported way back in like November of 24, right before the event, the 2024 event took place. They reported the teams that are going to be in it for 2025. Those teams changed. Kansas was in it initially, decided to drop out. I'm not sure why they ended up pulling out, but they got replaced by TCU. And I'm sure Kansas is seeing the fact that they would have probably gotten matched up. They would have gotten matched up against the defending champion Florida Gators. Would have been a cool opportunity for the Jayhawks to prove their early season worth. Not sure if they're kicking themselves too much for it. I would have certainly loved Florida, Kansas, but I am happy that TCU is in the mix here and curious to see what they're able to do against a Florida team that looks like they're going to be well in contention to try to repeat like they did last time back in the 2007-2008 season. So it'll be fun to see, or 06-07, excuse me. It'll be fun to see how Florida looks with this early season test. Like I said, 3rd year of the Rady Childrens Invitational, started in 2023 at the campus at Lion Tree Arena, the campus of UC San Diego. That year was Iowa, Oklahoma, USC, and Seton Hall. So again, similar conference makeup, SEC, Big Ten. In that case, it was Pac-12 and Big East with USC. Oklahoma beat USC for that first championship. And then last year, the 4 teams were Purdue, BYU, Ole Miss, and NC State. Purdue beat Ole Miss in the championship 80-78. It was a phenomenal basketball game if you missed it. BYU beat NC State 72-61 to finish 3rd place in that event. And then the 2025 event is actually moving. Both of those 2 were at Lion Tree Arena, again, the campus of UC San Diego. This year, the event is moving to Jenny Craig Pavilion, which is the campus of the University of San Diego in the WCC. It's a bigger arena, so it'll be a more fans, more people can go to the event as they're entering their 3rd season. Still in San Diego, still getting that sunshine in around Thanksgiving week. So fun to see this event continuing. Rady Children's is a hospital in San Diego, so a lot of the proceeds go towards a children's hospital, which you can always feel good about if you buy tickets to this event. Should be a lot of fun. Like we said, Florida, the obvious headliner. Anytime the defending champs are in an event, they're going to be the obvious headliner. They return their entire front court. Thomas Houck, Alex Condon, Ruben Chinyelu, Micah Handlogden, all coming back. They add Boogie Flan and Xavion Lee to the backcourt. Depth outside of that is probably the only concern I have for Florida, and it's not even that it's that bad. It's just that that's a really good top 6, but who's going to fill out outside of that? But this will be a nice early test for them. Again, they'll get TCU in their first game, and then assuming they win that game, assuming Wisconsin wins, which we shouldn't assume that, but those are the kind of the better teams in this group. Florida will end up getting either they'll get TCU and Wisconsin most likely, or TCU and Providence. Either way, a pair of quality early season games for the Gators. For Wisconsin, they get back John Blackwell, which is just massive for him, for them that he's coming back. They also added some nice transfers: Nick Boyd from San Diego State, Andrew Rady from Virginia, Austin Rapp, a stretch 4 incoming sophomore who was at the University of Portland last year. TCU's got a quality transfer portal class coming in as well. Tanner Toulson, a big name from Utah Valley, high-level scorer. Jaden Pierre from Providence. Brock Harding, a small guard from Iowa. And then Luterius Lelavicius from Oregon State. He was their 6th man last year. So some nice pieces coming in. They also have the 2nd-ranked junior college player in the entire class coming in, as well as Xavier Edmonds from Salt Lake Community College. So I'm interested to see. TCU's kind of been floating outside of that NCAA tournament picture in the Big 12 the last couple of years under Coach Jamie Dixon. We'll be interested to see if this is a year that they can kind of get back into that NCAA tournament picture. And if not, what that means for Coach Dixon's future over there in Fort Worth. And then got to talk Providence. Nice offseason for the Friars, Coach Kim English, who has kind of yet to get this program fully off the ground since he's taken over, but has a quality class coming in here, both with freshmen and with transfers. 2 4-star freshmen joining the Friars: Jameer Jones, who's the 43rd ranked player in this class, according to 247 Sports, and then Jalen Harrell, who's 78th. And then they got 5 transfers joining the program. Duncan Powell from Georgia Tech, Jason Edwards from Vandy. I think he's the kind of the cream of the crop in that group. Jalen Sellers from Central Florida is a nice player as well. Daquan Davis from Florida State, and then Cole Hargrove from Drexel. Should be a fun event. I think it's always kind of one of the more underrated ones, although I think last year's Purdue-Ole Miss championship was a compelling enough game that I think this is an event that's not getting overlooked quite as much. There's a larger conversation to be had, and has been had, on Locked On College Basketball over the last couple of years about how we are seeing more teams kind of gravitate towards these 4-team MTEs because it's only 2 games as opposed to 3 games, and with conference schedules bloating. And we did see the Big 12 scale back from 20 to 18. But with ACC still got a big tournament, or still got a big conference slate. The Big 10 still has a big conference slate. Like, as long as that continues to happen, we will see teams that are more willing to sign up for 4-team MTEs as opposed to 8-team MTEs where you're guaranteed 3 games. That could be bad news for events like Battle for Atlantis or the Maui Invitational, or these other kind of bigger 8-team events. And we may see a kind of a return for more of these 4-team MTEs, and certainly getting the defending champs in Florida, as well as a very good team in Wisconsin, and 2 quality high major programs in TCU and Providence, I think is pretty good proof that events like this are doing well, while events like Maui and Atlantis are maybe struggling a little bit more. And it'll be interesting to see what the future holds for those events, especially with not only 4-team MTEs cropping up, but also with these NIL events like we have with the Players Era Festival in Las Vegas. That's going to wrap it up for me today here on the Locked On College Basketball Podcast. Thank you so much, folks, for making the show your first listen or your first watch of the day. We got 3 more great shows coming your way later this week as we continue to get you ready for the NBA draft, continue to keep you up to date on recruiting, the transfer portal, conference realignment with the Pac-12 in the news for that, all sorts of good stuff here on Locked On College Hoops. Hit that subscribe button on YouTube if you have not done so yet. Follow along with us on social media or on the Locked On College Basketball Discord community. As always, we want to say apologies to the Lawyer family. Let's go Wild Popes. Cheers to the McBruins. And until tomorrow, peace out.